Hello everyone, and welcome back to our class on Genesis. Today we're going to be getting into Genesis 1. If you need a moment to go ahead and get your Bibles, turn to Genesis 1, maybe read it. If you need to pause the video, go ahead and do so. We're going to be talking about Genesis 1 today. Genesis 1 gives us an introduction to who God is and what the nature of the world is in which we live and what our role is on earth. And before we get started, I want to kind of talk a little bit about why this is important. Why is it important that we start here with this this broad general understanding of the universe? And that's because our view of reality shapes our goals and our actions. Recall from last week when we talked about the way that we think. We have an understanding of how things are. We have a goal, a way that we want things to be, and then we plan a sequence of behaviors that leads to that goal from where we are. And depending on our understanding of the world, and particularly our understanding of the fundamental nature of the world, how it actually works day to day, that's going to affect our understanding of the world around us, our understanding of our environment, and our thoughts on how the world should be and how we ought to act. So this understanding of the basic fundamental building blocks of the world and the principles on which it's founded really help us to shape our goals and our hopes and our plans. Because we're raised in the West, we tend to take for granted some of the incredible implications of Genesis 1. The creation myths that were dominant during the period in which Moses taught the creation account to the Hebrews led to a much darker view of the world than the one that we hold. Although actually we'll see it in a little bit, that the materialism that's becoming more popular is bringing our culture full circle back to this dark fatalistic view of the world. So I want to look at some of the Babylonian and the Egyptian creation myths, because these were the dominant views of the fundamental nature of the world in the time of Moses. And remember, Moses is, by tradition, the one who wrote Genesis, and he wrote it to the Hebrews after the exile, or not the exile, the Exodus. So the Babylonian creation myth is called the Enuma Elish. And the idea of this one is that in the very beginning, there's the god of order, or not really the god. These are kind of fundamental principles. They're like driving forces. They're hardly even, they have personalities, but they're not really considered gods. They're considered more foundational, more fundamental than that. So there's the force of order named Absu, and the force of chaos named Tiamat. And they're kind of represented by Absu is represented by fresh water, and Tiamat is represented by salt water. And it says that they mingled their waters, which is kind of a sexual image, and they give birth to the gods. Then what happens is the gods become really noisy, and it annoys Absu, and he goes to kill them, basically, but they kill Absu instead. This gets Tiamat really angry, and she creates the demons and appoints Kingu as the king of the demons. And then she goes off to kill the gods because they killed her lover. The gods can't even fight her. They can't even resist her. They send one champion after another to go and fight off Tiamat, but they come before her, and they're so so they're so terrified by the sight and the sound of her that they can't even do anything. Then a new god arises. They give birth to a new god named Marduk, and he's described differently. There's a complex description of him, and that kind of indicates that he's something new. He's a new type of thing, and they ask him to go and fight Tiamat for them, and he agrees if they will form a committee basically and vote him in as their king. They agree to that, and he goes off and slays Tiamat and makes the world from her corpse. The gods then complain, well, this is going to be a lot of work upkeeping this world because it's made out of the god of chaos, right? And so it's always going to have this natural tendency to devolve back into chaos and to just fall apart. And so what they do is they execute Kingu, who recall was the king of the demons, the head of the army that Tiamat had created to slay the gods. They execute Kingu, and the humans are made from his blood to serve as the god's slaves and keep the world from falling apart, from unraveling. So that's the Babylonian creation myth. The Egyptian creation myth is a little less violent, but it's still has some significant differences from the actual creation account that Moses gives. And here, the chaotic waters are just the primordial waters exist from eternity past. And they have these 4 properties: hiddenness, infinity, lack of direction or chaos, and darkness. And in the midst of these chaotic waters, Atum, the god of order, creates himself by an act of will, or some accounts say by speaking his own name. And then he produces Shu, the god of dry air, and Tefnut, the goddess of corrosive air. All the Egyptian gods come in pairs, except for Atum. And although you could say that he is the male pair of the chaotic waters, because the chaotic waters are considered feminine. So he produces Shu and Tefnut. There's different ways that different accounts say that he produces them. Some say by speaking their name. Some say he spits. Some say he mates with his own shadow. It's really weird. Some kind of strange, and there's a lot of sexual things that are described. Then the gods Shu and Tefnut, they separate the waters, which you'll recall is something that happens in Genesis 1. And then this gives birth to the sky, Nut, who is a god, male, and the earth goddess, Geb, who fall in love with each other, and they have a few 4 other gods that are produced, but then they're separated by Atum, and in order to form the sky in between. So the goddess Nut sort of holds back the chaotic waters, and the god Nut holds back the chaotic waters, and the goddess Geb forms the foundation of the earth. And then this is where Atum, who's now in the form, he shifts form and is renamed as the sun god Ra. And he comes to rest on the goddess Geb. Then what happens is the eye of Ra, who recall is a new form of Atum, separates from him and refuses to return. And Shu and Tefnut go out to bring it back, but it refuses. And in the struggle, it starts to weep. And the tears are what produces humans. So there's sort of this accidental offshoot of this struggling between the god and goddess Shu and Tefnut and the Eye of Ra. Then the humans are brought back to live in the world. So they're kind of just an accident. So this produces a view of the world that's, first of all, fundamentally chaotic. The fundamental property of the world is chaos. It's what makes up the world. Even in the Egyptian tale, the gods are offsprings. The gods which make up the world are offspring of the ideas or the structure provided by Atum and the actual material provided by the chaotic waters. And then men are an accident at best in the Egyptian mythic, and they're slaves in the Babylonian mythic. Now, there's a quote from C.S. Lewis that I want to read, and I'm going to bring that up. This quote is a little long, but I think it summarizes kind of the emotional pathos of this view of the world, including the materialistic view. You'll see this quote is from a fictional book that he wrote called Paralandra, and it's out of the mouth of a scientist, a materialist, who has come face to face with true evil and with his mortality, and he gives this description of his sort of revelation. As he says, "I'll tell you what's true. A little child that creeps upstairs when nobody's looking and very slowly turns the handle to take one peep into the room where its grandmother's dead body is laid out. That child knows something about the universe, which all science and all religion is trying to hide. People in Central Africa doing beastly things with masks on in the middle of the night, dirty priests in back streets in Dublin, frightening half-witted children to death with stories. You'd say they are unenlightened. They're not. Except that they think there is a way of escape. There isn't. That is the real universe. Always has been, always will be. That's what it all means." So there's this really dark view of the world that arises out of these creation epics, right? That the world is chaos. It's meaningless. It's barely held together by the structure that's been forced on it, but it's ready at any moment to just break down and dissolve. And so that gives kind of a fatalistic view for humans, because no matter what we do to try and produce order, to try and kind of get ahead, we can work and work and work as hard as we can, but in the end, all that's waiting for us is death. And it's really dark. It's really not a hopeful vision of the world. And what Genesis 1 does is it's revolutionary. It flips everything on its head and gives us a world of hope, a world of order. And we're going to look into that and see how it does that. So, first of all, the first thing we see here, I'm going to give us a broad overview of what Genesis 1 does. It gives us a view, first of all, the Creator God, the God of order. He is the ultimate source of all things. We see that in verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He created everything. So, at the foundation, the fundamental principle that the universe is based on is order, is a loving God, a God who's rational and reasoned, and who loves us and thinks of us as his beloved creation and wants us to succeed. And so this is completely counter to the view produced by the other creation epics. The other thing we see is that man is meant to subdue the world, that's what we're put here to do. God says, be fruitful, multiply, subdue the earth, and rule all the animals, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, the animals that creep on the earth. And then because the universe is made by God, and he is a God of order, this mission is a source of joy. Its work is something to be relished. It's not a hopeless, meaningless toil. Remember that this is before the fall, right? So the fall introduces toil. But if we align ourselves with God, then that toil turns to wonder, right? The work becomes a joyous thing. And so there's hope, even in this life, for a meaningful existence. So first, let's look at that first statement. God is the source of all things. What does this imply? That God created the heavens and the earth. And you'll see in verse 2, right? And the earth was formless and void, and the Spirit of God hovered over the surface of the waters. So there's this vision that picture is a picture of the primordial waters that the Hebrews would have been familiar with in the other creation epics. And what Genesis 1 is claiming is that God created those waters. God created the chaotic primordial waters. And so what this means is that things that look chaotic to us are not chaotic, in fact, because God, the God of order, the God of reason, created all things, including the chaotic waters. And so even though there's things we don't understand and that therefore seem to be chaotic, God created them, so they're not actually truly chaotic. They just follow an order. They follow a rule, a law that we don't understand yet. And so there's hope, right? We have this hope that that we can come to understand these things. Obviously, we can't understand everything because we're not God, right? But we can trust that there is someone who does understand these things and that they're under his control. Secondly, God, and therefore the world he has created, is orderly. That's the second thing we see. And we see this emphasized, it's almost shouted by the chapter, because it's so orderly. It's so there's all this repetition, and there's these patterns that are repeated over and over, and the whole thing has a pattern. The whole thing has a pattern that holds it together as well. So let's look at just some of this patterning. So first of all, the 6 days are in a pattern. The first 3 days, God creates a domain. He creates a region that's divided into two regions. On the first day, he creates light and dark. On the second day, he creates the sky and the sea. On the third day, he separates out the sea and the earth. And then on the fourth, fifth, and sixth day, he creates the inhabitants of those regions. He creates the stars and the moon, and he creates the sun. And they inhabit the dark and the light. And then he further creates rule. They are signs for seasons and for signs, for portents. And the moon rules over the night, and the sun rules over the day. And then he creates the birds of the air and the fish and the monsters of the sea. Then on the sixth day, he creates all the animals, and he creates man to rule over the earth. So God creates this orderly universe. And because it's orderly, we can trust, right? That even if we see chaos, there's an order to it. And all that we need to do, our task, is to take the chaos that we perceive and shift our perspective so that we can understand it, so that it becomes order. Then God gives us a mission. So he creates us, he gives us a mission. I'm going to read the passage. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. They will rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock, all the earth, and the creatures that crawl on the earth." So God created man in his own image. He created him in the image of God. He created them male and female. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every creature that crawls on the earth." So this is the mission that God initially gave us, that we're to complete here on earth. This is the reason that he made us, is to join him in his work of creation, to put our own spin on it, to take the things that seem like disorder to us and create order out of them, create something beautiful. And there's hope in that. There's joy in that, because it is an orderly universe. And so we can expect that when we work, when we put the work in, when we act as though the universe is ordered, when we plan for the future, that, our plans might not work out because we don't know everything, but there's someone out there that does. There's someone out there that knows everything, and that everything is going according to a plan. And if we're working to serve him, if we're working to fulfill his mission, then we can trust that the work that we're doing is not meaningless, that it's being used for a purpose. Finally, I want to end on this phrase that's repeated throughout the chapter. And God saw that it was good. This isn't like some sort of inspection. Like God said, okay, yeah, sure, good. This is up to code. Nice. There's a couple things to this. First of all, God's reveling in his creation, right? He's enjoying it. And he wants us to do the same. We're created in his image. So when we take part in his creative work, it's supposed to be something that we enjoy. It's supposed to be something that gives us meaning and purpose, and that actually brings happiness to our lives. And we see this, right? When you're living life, you're not actually, your happiest times aren't actually when you're just sitting around doing nothing, right? We think that sometimes. We think, man, I just wish I could get a break and just sit back and do nothing for a while. But that's nice at first, but it kind of gets boring, right? And we just, it turns into this kind of meaningless, dull, monotonous repetition. And we don't actually have positive emotion about our lives unless we're seeking after some goal, unless we're actually working towards something. It's having a purpose and seeing progress toward that purpose that gives us that sense of meaning in our lives. And God's the same way, right? God, as he's creating, as he's doing work and creating something for a purpose, he enjoys it. And the thing that naturally brings up is, well, okay, so he's creating something for a purpose. What's the purpose, right? God saw that it was good. Good for what? Well, what does he finish with? What's the last thing he does in creation? What's the pinnacle, the climax of this story? It's the creation of man. And it's God giving us this mission to subdue the earth and to rule over all the animals on it. And so what the universe is for, it's to give us something to work on. A lot of times we think that this God saw that it was good, right? Well, that means it's beautiful, right? And it was beautiful. It is beautiful. But I think it also has the connotation as a teacher, when I'm crafting a problem for a student, when I'm crafting a homework assignment, which, I'm sure for a lot of you sounds boring, but when I'm teaching college students, these are people that love the material, right? I'm teaching math major students, and these are people that love math. And so they enjoy learning. They enjoy going through this material. And if a question is well crafted, it challenges them to use what they've learned and to stretch themselves to reach into the chaos of what they don't understand yet, and take the structure that they've learned and kind of push that outward some in order to bring some structure to the chaos out there, to advance their understanding. And that's our mission, is to take the structure of what we know and push the boundaries on that. Bring some of the chaos of the world out there that we see that we don't understand, the things we don't know, and bring some of those things into the realm of order. Come to understand them and make something beautiful out of them. And so that's what God was doing with the universe. He was creating something that's going to give us a challenge, that's going to give us something to grow into, something to develop our talents and our creative abilities. And that's what the universe is good for. And I think this just gives us a different view of the universe. It gives us a view of something that's a puzzle almost, a puzzle to be solved. And obviously that got wrecked a little bit with, well, not just a little bit, a lot of it with the fall, because we're not even ordered anymore, right? With the fall, we decided we don't want to follow God's order. We want to be our own king. We want to be our own order. And so we became a problem in and of ourselves. And because we were set up as stewards and as rulers over creation, our fall, our rebellion affected the world around us as well. And so there is a little bit of actual evil that has affected the world. But the cross gives us a hope, right? The cross gives us this hope that we can turn to Christ, and he can help us through the Holy Spirit, help us to bring the chaos within us under God's domain, under God's order. And then that equips us to bring, to take that order and to spread it into the world around us. And that's still our mission. That's still our goal, to spread God's order, to spread God's kingdom. And in order to do that, we have to submit to his order ourselves. So it's a little harder, more than a little bit. It's a lot harder, but we have a lot more help than we had initially, I think. And so there's still hope. There's still that fundamental way that the universe is structured, that God initially created it as a place of order, but as a place for us to learn and to grow in. And I think that's still part of our mission here on earth as well. So this week, try to look at the world around you as a place to grow in. And maybe when something pops up that seems to throw your world into chaos, keep that view of the world in mind, that God is in control, that God is sovereign. He's the creator. He's the fundamental principle on which the universe is founded. And so we can trust that even though we don't understand how things are working out, even though we don't understand what's going on a lot of the times, there is someone who does. God understands what's going on, and he has it under control. And so we can take those situations where we're confused, where we don't know what's going on, and we can treat them as an opportunity to grow, as an opportunity to learn how to be the kind of being that God made us to be, the type of being that takes chaos and turns it into order, brings it into submission to us and by extension to God, provided that we're actually serving as members of God's kingdom. So I think that's a much brighter view of the world than the ancients had, and a brighter view of the world than a lot of modern materialists have. And it's a cause for hope. It's a cause for joy. So go out there and be agents of God's kingdom. Bring his order and his hope and joy to the world around you.